Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending the lecture that was organized by Corinne Horowitz. She is the president of the Friends of the Library. So I want to thank her for inviting me again. And I want to thank the Friends themselves for doing all that work to better the library and help. I would like to also thank my husband Juan Campo and my son Andres Campo to figure out how to tape this lecture. This lecture is about the history of chocolate and how it made it all the way also to the Middle East. And I would like to also thank my very good friend Nuha Khouri, who gave me this book a few years ago entitled The True History of Chocolate, and it's written by Sophie and Michael D. Coe. So Sophie D. Coe did an intensive amount of research on the history of chocolate, but unfortunately she passed away before she could write the book. So her husband picked up the piece and all the information and research that she made and added his research and wrote the book. To tell you the truth, when Corinne asked me to give the lecture, I said, okay, I've been giving lectures on Middle Eastern food. Why not something different? My very passionate food or drink is chocolate. So I thought, all right. So I read the book and it was just an amazing book to read. So I will recommend it to everybody. Of course, in the 50 minutes that we have left, I won't have enough time to tell you the entire history in details. But the history of chocolate, which was called Natwal in the Mayan language. Uh, this is where the chocolate pod that we see here on this particular tablet of chocolate was originated, and there were several variety, but the most famous variety are the Criollo and the Teobroma. So two of them are the best. So the Mayans are the one who started with the plantation of Natwal, which from one thing to another became cocoa, chocolate, and the chocolate in the Greek language means the food of the god, which is fair enough because it used to be the food of the god and the temples in ancient Mayan civilization. From the Mayan civilization, it went on to the Aztec civilization around Latin America, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras. So it made its way all the way through Latin America, and later it went to Europe, from Europe back to the United States, and from Europe also to the Middle East, from Europe to Asia. It's a very long story, but let me resume the story for you so that you can understand how chocolate happened. We have a lecture about coffee, the history of coffee, and how it spread all the way to all over the world. This is, in a nutshell, the history of chocolate and how it spread all the way to the entire world. So, to start with, um, who is the reason for spreading chocolate around the world? It wouldn't have happened if the Spaniard and the Portuguese wouldn't have conquered Mexico and some parts of Latin America in the 1600s. And this is when Spain got to know about the plant. So when they were received from the king of the Aztec king, they were uh, they were served chocolate, a liquid. So this particular chocolate comes from Mexico, and it says the price of the Aztec. And when you open it, it is here like a coin. So this is what Mexicans use after mass to drink chocolate. And of course, there is cinnamon added to it. So from the chocolate of the Aztec, we came to the greatest cocoa powder. Then you can find this at Trader Joe's, sipping chocolate. And this is also from Aztec chocolate, and it has dark chocolate, ancho, chipotle, chili peppers, Ceylon cinnamon, yellow maize, and Madagascar vanilla beans. I'm reading the ingredients because when the Aztec and the Mayan used chocolate at first, they used to put in it maize, so they used to mix it with maize and ancho and chipotle and chili peppers. And so don't think at any time that during the time of the Mayan and the Aztec, chocolate was sweet. No, they didn't use the sweet chocolate. So they use it as the drink, especially in temples when they have like what I call like canopic jars, where they mixed it with water and the chocolate itself and these type of ingredients. And to make the chocolate foam on the top, they used to pour it from one container to the other several times until it formed a froth. Of course, this was the very first way of drinking chocolate, but also they had a way to process the chocolate pods because in each chocolate pods there are 40 seeds of chocolate. So the 40 seeds of chocolate are removed from a cover that is whitish and sweet, and then they have to dry it first in the sun, and then they have to roast it like you roast coffee, but then they had to remove a peel from that particular pod, and then uh, crush it until it becomes powdery. So this is the type of Mayan and Aztec hot chocolate, and they used to drink it cold. But the chocolate was bitter because there was no sugar or honey or anything of that sort. Until the Spaniard came, as I mentioned, they were received by the Aztec king and they were offered cold drink chocolate. Of course, they didn't like it because it was very kind of bitter. But with that, they came to realize that the Aztec were trading with the chocolate pods. They used it as a monetary way of buying slaves or buying goods on the market or trading with different countries. So the Spaniard adopted the seeds because they realized that it had a monetary value. And this is when they started to spread it all over Europe because, as you know, Spain was a big empire that owned most of Europe, with Portugal as well. So let me pause here for a second and explain to you that the history of chocolate is related to religion, history, geography, industry, culture, cultivation of it. Slaves played a big role into the history of chocolate because they were the laborer that were not paid. Also, the drink was only reserved for the high and up aristocracy in Europe, and because it was a very expensive um, drink to have. Also, the industry is involved in the history of chocolate and the spreading of chocolate. So you see the many historic components that both the writers of the history of chocolate had to really scour all kinds of books and primary readings. They went to dictionaries, they went to writers like Voltaire, Diderot, La Marquise de Sévigné. So also literature is involved in the history of chocolate. So when you look at this yummy thing that we love to eat and how many components are related to it, it's amazing. So you go to the store and you found dark chocolate, and you find dark chocolate, but on the sweetened side. We have also white chocolate, okay, which they do not consider chocolate, but is derivative of chocolate. So here I got you a variety. So this one is 85% dark chocolate from Uganda. The chocolate traveled all the way to Africa as well. And this one is another dark chocolate, Belgian dark chocolate, different quality. This one is a mini milk chocolate bars. So you see how they they have developed chocolate to make it from a drink to a bar to wafers. They even gave it to soldiers on the battlefield so that they can sustain them. Also, I forgot to add one more component to the history of chocolate is the medical component, because at a certain time in the 17th and 18th century in Europe, they considered chocolate like medicine. And I still remember when I was a little girl, it was used as medicine as well. So we had those little laxative pills with chocolate. This is how they could give it to the children. This is called Montezuma chocolate. Here we go back to Mexico. And here also is another one of the Montezuma. This one is a baking chocolate and it is unsweetened without any sugar. And this one is Côte d'Or from Belgium. And these three are from England, which is the famous Cadbury family. Cadbury family and Cadbury industry that in the 18th century went to Birmingham, England, and opened a big factory. And near the factory, they built many houses for the workers. It was owned by the Quakers. And since the Quakers had social and empathy to people, so they built all these homes around the factory for people to be able to live in it and come and work in the factory. Of course, there are factories all over Switzerland, France, Belgium, Spain, of course. So to begin, so we started with the Aztecs who used to drink it cold, but with the Spanish Empire, when they took it to other countries, people didn't like it because they drank it without any sugar. But then with the introduction of sugar to Europe, people started to change the recipes. So they start to put sugar to it. That we are talking about drinking chocolate for now, or honey. So that made it more palatable, because if you eat a piece of chocolate that is without sugar, it's very bitter, okay? So the medical profession were debating whether lots of drinking chocolate was good for you at the time of the 16th, 17th, 18th century or not. Some people claimed it was good for their system. Remember also that at the time they were dealing with the Galen type of medicine, where it was according to the temperature of the body, which also exists in Islam. You eat cold things for the hot body or hot things for the cold body, and what is considered cold and what's considered hot. So in instance, in the case of chocolate, since it grows into the forest and it has a mixture of humidity and coldness, so it's quite tempered. So between the medical people, it went back and forth between, okay, this is good for people, no, this is not good for people. Do not abuse too much drinking of chocolate. The women are the one who introduced chocolate also to Europe. So when Spain took over the Aztec country, which is now Mexico, Guatemala, and all these areas, the poor soldiers, the poor Spaniard soldiers, intermarried with Aztec women, and the very wealthy Spaniard soldier had the Aztec women as concubines. So as a result, there was a lot of children who were called mestizo. Mestizo means is a hybrid of races, and also called criollos, like we call the food in New Orleans, Creole food, because it's a mixture of slave food, French food, maybe British food as well. So the women were very, of course, the Aztec women loved the drinking of chocolate, and this is how they passed it on to the Spaniard, and from Spain, the Spaniard passed it on to Europe. And it was a very big trade at the time because, as you know, Spain had a big armada of boats that used to transport lots of goods from the new world to the old world and back and forth. So among the things that they transported was chocolate, and because of chocolate, they started to buy slaves. And the price of a slave was about 100 pounds of chocolate, of seeds of chocolate, unfortunately. So, and why did they started to have slaves all the way from Africa is because when Spain invaded, they came with Catholicism. So the very first order were not the Jesuit, there was another order, can't remember the name now, I'm sorry. There was another order that started to convert the Aztec and the Mayan. And of course, as you know, with the conversion and the invasion, they came with their illnesses and their disease. And they started to use them as the grower of chocolate, of the chocolate pods. So of course they used them as slaves, and as a result, with the illnesses that they brought to the New World, many of the Aztec died, unfortunately. So they needed more hands to grow the chocolate or to grow the chocolate pods. So they started to buy from Africa slaves to be their laborers. And of course, it spreads all the way to the Caribbeans and to the islands where the rich and famous used to go and spend time. On the other hand, the Jesuit came and started to monopolize the trade of chocolate, and they just the Franciscan came before the Jesuit, and after the Franciscan, the Jesuit came, and they monopolized completely the trade of chocolate and spread it all over the world. On the other hand, the Pope at the time, you know that at the time in Catholicism, if you wanted to take communion, you had to start at fasting from midnight, the previous night, all the way to the time when communion was given. So he was debating whether hot chocolate was at a time a drink and food at the same time, or a drink only. If it was a drink, it was okay to drink it, but if it's food and drink, there you had to fast from chocolate. And that's what happened until 1958, when the Pope in 1958 declared that you can eat chocolate before communion, and declared that the fasting was not going to happen from midnight all the way to the time of communion, but only an hour before communion. Also, many of the monasteries use chocolate to make drinks and to spread it all over so people get accustomed with it. Also, besides the chocolate tablets that we know, and the chocolate drinks, they also make chocolate like little balls of chocolate to decorate cakes and so on and so forth. So when I went the first time to Mexico, we ate something called mole. And as you know, mole is a mixture of turkey, chocolate, spices, and so on and so forth. And I thought for a I said chocolate, that is strange. Why I was so astonished? Because for me, chocolate was something sweet you ate. You didn't eat it with the savory meal. But then when I read about it, I discovered that the mole was not invented in Mexico. The mole was invented by Italians. Why? Because Italians started um, to experiment with food and also to sell more food and to have a variety of things. They used to put it with the regular food that they ate. But how was it invented? It said that one time there was an archbishop coming to a convent of nuns, and one of the nuns was in charge of cooking. So, and they knew that that bishop loved chocolate. But the first story said that she was cooking the food, and all of a sudden the chocolate fell into the pot, and it was too late for her to redo another pot. So she continued, and that's how chocolate was introduced. The other story about Italians also said that the same nun said, "Oh, I know that Archbishop loves to eat chocolate, so I'm going to put it in the food." So from it dropped into the food, from her putting it in the food without anybody knowing, so that's how the mole started. And of course, with the new world, which we call America nowadays, we are a mixture of people, right, from all races, from all over the world, and probably the Mexican took from the Italians, maybe from the New World, the mole custom. Also, before too much time go by, I want to make a cake for you. I call it flourless cake, and that use lots of chocolate. So for that, I have a pound of chocolate, semi-sweet chocolate, and to that pound, I am going to add a stick of butter, which is 8 tablespoons of butter. And my recipe used to say, put it um, on the stove with a boiling water, on top of boiling water on the stove. But I discovered that, you see, everything is an evolution. With the microwave is faster and better. So I'll put it in the microwave for about 1 minute and 35 seconds, and we'll see what happens. It will melt and you will stir it. Meanwhile, I am going to crack 5 eggs into this bowl. So, one, don't let the egg shells go inside. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Of course, cakes were not at the beginning of the chocolate recipes, okay? It was drinking chocolate, and the French invented a new chocolatière, means a utensil in which you make the hot chocolate. While in Aztec time, they had like something called the minilo, which you see Mexican use. You can go to the Mexican stores and find it. It's made out of wood, and at the end there is like a little ball that help you mix the hot chocolate and make it froth. So that was a new invention, instead of pouring from one container to the other. And of course, with the chocolate industry that has been evolving, so it was adopted by the European because the chocolate became nice and sweet. But then from Europe, the Dutch took over the trade of chocolate, like the Dutch also took the trade of spices from the Arabs. But before the Arabs were the Sicilians, followed by the Dutch. And then the Dutch took it to Samoa and in Asia, but the Asian really didn't care about the chocolate. The only place that really cared for chocolate where the Jesuit took it is in the Philippines. So in the Philippines, um, people still drink and eat chocolate for Christmas and they like it. So they adopted the chocolate because of the Jesuits. But then the Jesuit also became very using the native Indian American to grow the chocolate, and they were abusing them, and they used slaves until at a certain time the Jesuits said, you know, this is not a good thing to do, especially that we are teaching Christianity. We should be nicer to people. And then the Jesuit changed completely. So now I am doing the mixing of the chocolate with the butter that has been melted. So I need to really mix them well together. Meanwhile, I am going to take this one, I had to do it. I had to put some water boiling on top of the stove because I don't have any other methodology of taking the sugar with the eggs and heat it a little bit. And the reason why we do this is because we want to avoid salmonellas and all that. So here I am going to let my chocolate cool for a little bit, and I'm going to add to the 5 eggs a quart of a cup of sugar. You can use any sugar you like. Okay. And then I am going to take, meanwhile, I have buttered an 8-inch round pan with butter, and I put at the bottom parchment paper buttered as well. So I am going to take the whisk of my mixing machine here and go to the stove where the water has been boiling. And for a minute, I am going to, I'll just put a minute here on the clock. I am going for a minute to give it a nice stir, sugar, and so I am beating the sugar and the eggs on top of the stove to heat it a little bit for a minute. Don't let the water touch your container. Okay. So the minute is over, and I am going to bring this here. First, I am going to put my whisk. Then okay, sorry, I have to reposition the container, put it up, then here, and then I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to beat it for 10 minutes on high. Meanwhile, I am going to add some vanilla while it's beaten. And some Grand Marnier. You can add also orange peel, or you can squeeze a little bit of orange in all this combination. So you can flavor it any way you like they flavored chocolate before. So I'll put some Grand Marnier. It smells good. So this is going to take quite a long time. So can you hear me? Yes? Not really. Okay. So while this is on, um, how did chocolate make it all the way to the Middle East, especially Egypt? Egypt was invaded by many countries, including uh, England, France, and at the time in the 1860s, many Europeans lived in Cairo. Maybe I'll wait until this is over. Meanwhile, this is getting, oh, meanwhile, I am going to make another chocolate. I have whipping cream and chocolate here that I'm going to melt in the microwave. I am melting it because I'm going to decorate the cake with it. Maybe it will take less than 10 minutes. So after the 10 minutes or 7 minutes, because nowadays we have a stronger mixer, 20 years ago, I had this recipe from more than 20 years ago. The mixers were not as strong as now. So let me show you what it looks like. If I can tilt here, we beated the eggs and they are extremely up. So what you are going to do to temper your chocolate has a temperament. So you are going to add a little bit of the eggs that you beated to the chocolate and cover it to temper the chocolate first, because you don't want to add the chocolate to the eggs and get curdles. Curdle. So here we go. We are going to mix first the eggs that we beated with that. So meanwhile, I was trying to tell you how did I am Egyptian and I lived in Egypt, then came to the United States. But in Egypt, I got to know chocolate. So, and I fell in love with chocolate. So how come chocolate came all the way to Egypt? As you know, Egypt was conquered and occupied by so many countries. And among them was England and France. So you know that the French are the one who built the Suez Canal. So the engineer was de Lesseps, and they remained until 1956, until Nasser declared that the Suez Canal was an Egyptian property. In the 1860s, many Europeans lived in Cairo, in Alexandria. They were Italian, Greek, French, British, Lebanese, Palestinian, Syrian, name it, they had them. So in 1866, after Switzerland developed a very good machinery industry to make chocolate, there was a Swiss by the name of Giacomo Groppi who came to Egypt and opened his pastry shop called Groppi. At first, he opened it in Alexandria because Alexandria at the time was the land of all the foreigners. But then he opened a big one in Cairo, and after that, he opened another one. So Groppi was the pastry shop in Egypt, introduced the Egyptian, especially the upper class Egyptian, to chocolate, ice cream, um, um, marron glacé, brioche, croissant, name it, he had it. So when they started to open, he had a very big kind of restaurant where all the aristocracy used to go. Many of the writers, many of the people who were fomenting revolutions and stuff. So also he played a role in the history of Egypt. And of course, for Easter and Christmas, every year he will make Santa Claus made out of chocolate or eggs, chocolate eggs and chocolate bunnies. So Egyptians were introduced to this habit of eating chocolate for Christmas and Easter. So this is how chocolate made it all the way to Egypt. Uh, I am not sure if the majority of the Egyptian population eats chocolate, but of course nowadays they sell it everywhere. And as a result, there were factory of chocolate open in Egypt, and one of the famous brand was called Corona. Unfortunately, it's like the virus nowadays, and they made everything from wafer chocolate to chocolate tablets to chocolate with caramel. And this is how Egyptians got to know chocolate. So now I am nicely and gently folding the, the eggs with the chocolate and the butter. And after it gets all integrated together, I am going to put it in my prepared pan and put it in a preheated oven of 425 degrees for about 50, I don't know, it will take between 15 and maybe 19 minutes. So I'll check after 15 minutes and see what happens. So here we go. You pour all the chocolate. Can everybody see the chocolate in the pan? Here we go. Of course, you want every bit of chocolate in your pan. So what happens inside the oven, it will puff. But then after you take it out of the oven, you have to let it cool for about, until it cools completely. And in the same pan, you put it in the refrigerator. You can put it in the refrigerator overnight or for 2-3 hours, it's up to you. So I am trying to do this. So this is what it looks like. And I'm going to put it in the oven now, 425 oven for, I'm going to put 18 minutes on the clock to see what will happen. So yeah, so I have one now that is all ready to go, but let me show you what it looks like. Let me wash my hands first. I think that I left it a little too long, but it looks good. Look at this. So this doesn't have any flour in it, so it puffed into the oven. So now what I did was to put some chocolate with some whipping cream, and I'm making here a kind of cover for the chocolate. It's more chocolate and more chocolate. It's just a lot of chocolate. Of course, you are going to eat little pieces of this chocolate because it's too rich. Okay, so try to cover the sides as gently as you can. And then you can refrigerate it until you use it. But I will recommend that you get it out of the fridge about 2 hours before you are going to eat it, because you want it to not to be too cold. So here I am trying to cover with chocolate everywhere on the sides. Don't worry about if the plates get dirty, we can always clean it with paper towels. So here we go. I'm trying to cover all surface and sides. Then you can decorate it by only putting raspberries with mint leaves, and you can also whip some whipping cream and decorate it with the whipping cream if you like, or you can leave the whipping cream on the side and then people can help themselves because some people like it, some people don't. All right, so now it is all covered with chocolate, and I am going to, of course, clean the sides. A little wet maybe here so that it looks good. So the decoration can be from simple to sophisticated to whatever you like. So of course, when I told you I mixed some of the chocolate with some of the whipping cream, I am making a ganache here. So here we go. One more. And of course, when I spoke about religion and chocolate, nowadays for Easter, many people abstain from eating chocolate instead of abstaining from eating meat. And this again is becoming part of the fasting from chocolate like it used to be in the 1600 and 1700 in Europe. It's really interesting how things come around. So let me just get another. So the history of chocolate that I gave you is in a nutshell, because in few minutes you don't have much time to say much, of course. But I would recommend that book to you because it's really good, the one that I mentioned. Also, to serve with the cake, you can take raspberries, put it in any quantity of raspberries with some sugar and some Cointreau. You can put it in the food processor, process it, and then strain it, and then use it as a sauce for serving. So to decorate, what I like to do is to put like 3 raspberries here, and I have some mint that my husband grew outside our patio, and I can put the mint in here like this, and then continue with the raspberries all around. You can put as many as you want. You can put them on the side, you can put them down, up. Here we go. I'm trying to just get a little balance here in the decoration. And then you can put this on the side. With more raspberries down. So use your imagination. There is nothing that says decorated this way or that way. Use it any way you like. So I put one raspberry for each one of these mint around here. And then I will cut a piece and taste for you guys. I'm sorry that you can't taste with me. I promise I'll make it for you once the COVID is over. So here is what it looks like. Can you all see the cake decorated? Now, I am going to cut the cake and have a little piece to taste. So as I said, this is so rich that you only need a little piece. You get a plate. And I'll cut a small piece. Let's see if I can pick it up. In one piece. There we go. It fell. It's okay. We'll eat it. It fell because it's very, as I mentioned, I left it too long to bake, so it becomes a little crumbly, but let me taste and see if the taste was affected. Delicious. Nothing affected the taste. It tastes like truffles, you know, the chocolate truffles. It's really good. So, in a nutshell, the history of chocolate include historical facts, geographical facts, according to where the cacao plant can be planted. It's also planted in Africa because the Jesuit took it all the way to Africa and started to deforest many of the forests and just grow cocoa plants. Unfortunately, medicine, industry, engineering, because it's involved with the industry. The trade of sugar was very important, played a role with chocolate, the honey as well. The social aspect, because it was used by the very famous, and when Van Houten came and processed the chocolate to a powder, he made it available to all the people and they could afford to drink the chocolate. But with the industry of making the chocolate tablets, it became expensive at the beginning. But then with the industry evolving, it made it available to everybody. And we should not forget to mention the famous American chocolate factory Hershey on the East Coast that made chocolate very, very popular here in the United States. And of course, they're distributing the chocolate all over the world, all over Asia, Europe, the Middle East, everywhere. So this is the history of chocolate in a nutshell. Thank you.